Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to How to Get Hired with me, the company's expert. How's everyone doing today? Thank you for being here. If you have any questions to do with resumes, job interviews, careers, networking, all of that stuff, this is the place. This is a general Q&A. Ask me whatever the hell you want, and I will do my best to try and be of some service. So, to start things off, I'm going to do some absolutely shameless self-promotion. Why not? If you haven't seen it already, check out the latest video on my channel. That's right. I finally got off the deep end, and this is what YouTube has reduced me to, ladies and gentlemen. Check it out. Also, if you're new to the channel or you're new to the live streams, check out my course. If you are looking for a job, you're wanting to know how the whole thing works. Okay, not just the sort of conventional ways of getting a job, applying to a recruiter after answering a job ad, but more sophisticated ways of getting a job. Check out this course. It has multiple techniques. Basically, I put all my lessons in there from beginning to end in easy steps with templates, etc., etc., etc. If you're looking to break into the world of networking, if you are an introvert, if you are looking how to create career opportunities for yourself outside of the jobs that you find that are posted publicly, this is the sort of definitive guide for that. So check that out. Link in description if you are interested. I see there are 9 people here. Thank you. Oh, that went down to 7 the moment I said it. 7 people here. Thank you for being here. You guys are all awesome. And we are here to answer questions on how to find success in your career. Okay. I do a couple of weekly live streams. The first one I did not half an hour ago, which is about side hustles for the people who are interested in side hustles and that sort of entrepreneurial type thing. But this is a general Q&A where we could talk about recruiters, hiring managers, how hiring is done, what's really going on in job interviews, what's really going on in the hiring and function, recruitment and selection, what it appears like from the other side of the table, what their perspective is, all of that. Okay. Julia, hello to Julia in the chat. Julia says, "Hi Bill, what to wear is an amazing video. Thank you for a great mood." Yeah. Thank you very much, Julia. I'm glad you like it. I have taken the next step in sacrificing my dignity for the entertainment of all mankind. So that's what I do, or humankind, I should say. So yes, I'm glad you liked it. Thank you so much. But yes, I had to dress up like an idiot. It was dumb, right? I've got this button. When I press this button, this happens. Dumb with a capital B. So I've needed excuses to use that. Not a lot have come up so far. Oh, I have another one. The less common version, or the less common used button, even more rarely than that, is this. Existential crisis. What you need to do is you need to put your hand to your head like this and say, existential crisis, as it comes up in your life. It's one of those magic moments that we can all share together and grow stronger in doing so. Melcy says, hi to Melcy. Julia, you're an amazing personality, I must say. Well, thank you very much. It comes from being a technically oriented introvert. Not all of us can be technically oriented introverts. That's fine. Nothing to be ashamed of. But usually it means that you don't like to do social interaction. You can do it, but you don't enjoy it. I was forced into it. I think a lot of introverts are in the same position. I did a live stream a couple of weeks ago called Introverts Are Awesome, which talks about that. The unfortunate, sad fact of this world is that you do need to interact with other people. So knowing how to do that kind of helps, you know? I don't care what your career is, you know, it's something that needs to be done. And unfortunately, it yields a lot of advantages. So that's why people place a lot of importance. They place too much importance on it, I think. Because at the end of the day, you need to do more than just talk to people. You need to actually be able to do things. So, but you have to strike a balance between doing things and talking to people. And one of the interesting things is that the higher you go in the world of business, if you become a supervisor or a manager or a director, like a manager of managers, or any other type of executive, it becomes increasingly about talking and interacting with other people, coordinating them, motivating them, communicating to them, setting up systems where they can communicate to you. If they have bad news, you want that to travel upwards. Things like this. That becomes the name of the game. So unfortunately, developing those skills is kind of important, even though some of us would rather not do any of that. And trust me, I understand. Melcy says, it's my first time in your live. I've been following you for more than 2 years now, and I like your content. Well, thank you very much, Melcy. Number one, for saying that. That's very flattering. And number two, for pulling the trigger on joining a live stream. So you are most welcome here. And if you have any specific questions about anything to do with hiring, jobs, careers, anything, get in the chat and let me know, and I will do my best to answer your question. The one drawback of this format is that unless questions are coming in, I feel a certain pressure to fill dead air with talk of varying degrees of intelligence. So if you guys have questions, get in the chat, let me know what you're wondering, and we can start talking about stuff that actually matters to you. How do you say that? Sherwayne says, they did not ask any behavioral or technical questions. Don't know how to feel about it. I was very positive about the first one. Second interview feels like a dud. Okay. What did they ask you then, Sherwayne, if I can ask, in your second interview? If it wasn't behavioral or technical, were they just asking you, like, why do you want to work here or something like that? What did you do at your last job? Why did you leave? Where are you going to be in 5 years? They just ask you those types of questions. Those are actually, or they can be, some of the easier questions because they require slightly less preparations than things like behavioral questions or technical questions. A lot of technical questions, there's a limit to how much you can prepare for them because, if you don't know a lot of technical areas by the time your job interview is imminent, there's not too much you can do as a crash course. Jip, I like that name. It's a good, solid name. Jip says, I just had a bit of experience with a recruitment company. I had to register and submit a small video and my CV with contact details. Looking through the FB, Facebook, later, I saw the same picture of the lady that... More to follow in the next exciting installment. Julia says, introverts are the best. Introverts are awesome. I mean, look, introverts are awesome. Extroverts are awesome. People that are kind of like right on the border of the two, you're awesome too. The thing about introverts, though, is I feel they get a bad rap. Because although some of them really haven't developed their communication skills, right? You know who you are. A lot of them, just because they're quiet, tend to get a bad rap from more extroverted people. Okay, a little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing. A lot of extroverts think that everyone's like them. And they think that the way they are, that's normal. Anyone who is different from me is abnormal. So they tend to look down on introverts. I've encountered that. Sometimes I tend to agree. I mean, if you're an introvert and you don't know how to talk to anybody properly, you haven't developed those skills, or you have no respect for those skills, that can be an issue. That can really hurt you. However, this stuff is really not that hard. It's just a matter of learning a few principles, and bam, you're in there. Okay, so we're going to continue with the story from Jip here. Had to register, submit a small video, saw the same picture of the lady that I said, I don't have confidence in this position as your pic is advertised on Facebook as over 40s models. Wow. I asked, is this a legit recruitment company? Yeah, I would see that as a red flag if my understanding from what you're saying is in fact what happened. I would consider that a little bit of a red flag. Yeah. I mean, not necessarily. You never know. People have stories behind stuff, but that doesn't strike me with confidence when you first hear that. And to pick up from Sherwayne here, they did not ask any behavioral or technical questions. Okay. I'm transitioning into a new role. Don't have any experience relating to the new role. They asked if I have experience relating to the role, which I don't, but I'm studying towards it. Okay. You know, this is the thing. Like, how can I put this? You know, I'm really not knocking recruiters because I understand the job they have. But it gets a bit silly because recruiters in general, just by virtue of having the job that they have, they don't understand empirically what's needed for the jobs they're recruiting for. So they always revert to these type of techniques. Like, for example, how many years experience do you have in something? And there's nothing wrong with that in itself, but then it turns into, well, if you don't have any experience in it, then you can't possibly know what to do, right? I mean, that's not true. That's a fallacy. This is one of the big issues with corporate recruitment and the way it's done and what recruitment and selection has turned into. Because in order to do things like changing careers, you have to go outside of that, right? We've talked about that multiple times, right? If you're changing careers, you've maybe worked for 10 years in one industry and now you want to go and be a teacher or something, you know, something else, right? And the first question they have for you is, oh, how many years experience do you have being a teacher? And you have to say, well, none. And they say, oh, well, okay, well, how could you possibly know what to do? You have never done it before. So I'm sorry, but you're just not a good fit, right? How often have we encountered that? The thing is, it's perfectly possible to change careers. A lot of people do it. People do it every day. All you do is you go outside of that HR recruitment and selection system. You talk to hiring managers. If you sit down with a hiring manager and they see, hey, you're awesome. You're passionate about this. You're great at communicating. You've got a lot of charisma. You seem to be really interested in this field. You're asking some very intelligent questions. We click. They'll give you a chance. They'll say, you know what? I think, you deserve a chance. Let's put you in front of a class and see how it goes. That's how people change careers. You don't go through recruiters. So you go to the people who actually empirically understand the job that you would presumably be filling. Right? It's very artificial, all these requirements. Now, I have sort of let the chat get away from me here, so let me just go back here. Okay, we talked about JIP. And Melcy says, I moved in Hong Kong just recently, and I'll apply for a job as an English teacher, but I'm a bit nervous with everything. Any advice you could give to me? Yeah, learn how to teach. Like, really, seriously, that's... I don't mean to sound condescending, but that's what's important. So if you can teach, if you can get up in front of a room, you can communicate well, people respond to you, people like you, and you're effective, that's the number one thing. Okay? There are some jobs where you have to talk a good game. Like, for example, are you a good software developer? Well, I can't actually see that firsthand. Okay? I can try and approximate it by giving you a sort of technical test. Here's some math questions and some programming problems. See if you can solve them. But that doesn't really answer the question if you're going to be a great developer, right? So you have to sit there and talk about how you're a great developer, right? That's a different skill from actually being a great developer. With a teacher, once again, you can sit there and you can talk about being a teacher. But it's relatively easy to say, okay, in the job interview, this is a job interview, teach me something. Pretend like you're in class, I'm a student, get up, teach me something. Right? Now, if you can do that, that speaks for itself. So that's the number one thing, okay? there's too many people, in my opinion, and based on my experiences, that they go to school to learn how to be a teacher, and they learn about different learning styles and all this kind of stuff. But when they get up in front of a class, they're actually not very good. You know, they speak too quiet. They're not animated enough. They don't make the material come alive. That's been my sort of thing. So if you learn how to develop those teaching skills, okay, and you can like show them off at a moment's notice, that's going to be very powerful. Okay, apply for jobs where, you know, I think what you're doing, apply for jobs where it's very formalized. You're going to recruiters. They're wondering about qualifications and on paper, you know, do you have everything? But also apply for stuff that's a little less formal. Go apply for like colleges and things where you can, you know, go and talk to the hiring manager or a dean or something and say like, I'd very much like to do this. And they say, okay, you know, we'll give you a chance. And you demonstrate the skills for them. That can shortcut that whole HR hierarchy and you're in there. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. I didn't think I expressed that very well, but I mean, I have some experience in that area. I went back after years and years of working in the private sector. I went back and worked in academia for a few years, like just teaching. And it was an interesting experience, put it that way. Okay, where do they leave off here? Move to Hong Kong. So that was Melcy. Julia, is it normal practice when they arrange a job interview in a restaurant? Is it okay to ask for another place if restaurant is uncomfortable for you? It's not unheard of. It's not unheard of. In fact, if you get a job through networking, that type of things becomes more and more the norm. Okay. I would much rather talk to somebody in a coffee, like a Starbucks or a coffee place, you know, than in somebody's office. Because you go to somebody's office, it's on their turf. You know, I'd rather meet in a neutral location, right, to do those kind of like informational interviews and things like this, or networking meetings. So a job interview, if you're meeting in a third-party restaurant, like it's not like you're trying to get a job in the restaurant, right? This is just a third-party location. It's not on their turf. It's not on your turf. I think it's good. It can help to balance the power dynamics. Usually when you go to a job interview, it's like you go to their property, in their building, in their office, maybe a conference room or something, you know, or somebody's office. And it's like, it's their turf. They feel in charge. They feel comfortable. You're out of your comfort zone. You're in a strange location with strange surroundings. And, you know, you feel like they're in control and you're not. Okay, that's typical for a lot of people that do job interviews. Okay, if you're doing it in a third-party place, it's on nobody's turf. It helps it helps to be able to have conversations and things rather than having it be an interrogation. So it can be good. Okay, now if they've chosen somewhere that's like really noisy and you've got like people brushing past you and you know this kind of thing, I understand it might not feel very professional and this kind of thing, but I mean, you don't have much choice if that's what they picked and that's what they tell you have to do. I would not ask for a different place because that's signaling that, you know, you're a demanding person, you've got issues. It's much better to just swing with it. So if they say, I would like to have the meeting here, as much as possible, try to say, sure, not a problem. You know, I'm accommodating. I can swing with it. You know, I'm not very high maintenance. I can roll with it. You want to do it this way? Not a problem. I will adapt. You know, that's always a good sort of attitude to have, obviously within reason, but for just something like this, that's what I would recommend, all things being equal. Hopefully that makes sense. That was Julia, right? Yeah, Julia. Man, I am not keeping up with this chat. I have to go faster. Let's see here. Okay, so Jip again. They said they don't want to put themselves out there because they have contact with so many people and they don't want to take the risk. Now this was for Oh yeah, the over 40 models. Yeah, listen, that does seem weird, okay? Like people that are so paranoid, they don't want to put themselves out with. I have seen that before. I've actually worked with organizations that have that paranoid attitude. And at least in my experience, the reason they think like that is because they've got something to hide. It does signal something kind of bad. In one case, it's because they've got a lot of angry former employees out there that wish them ill. In another case, they had a very, very unhealthy attitude towards employees in general. And that manifested itself in like how they deal with the public and how they deal with employees in general. So I have seen that, and in a couple of occasions, it hasn't been good. So I don't know if that would convince me to like tell them to go take a hike and just end the process, but keep that in mind. That is definitely a red flag. You are not imagining things. If you get a weird vibe from them doing that, that is strange. Jip Anderson, I said, well, you expect candidates to. Yes, I agree. It's a double standard. They want you to put yourself out there, but they're unwilling to do it. Usually you see the opposite. Usually you see people in HR, a lot of times, not necessarily. If it's a big company, they'll have their own internal recruitment and selection people. However, for the vast majority of companies out there, they tend to outsource at least part of the recruitment and selection process. So they will go with an external HR company. Those companies, they want to be visible. They're like pushing their brand and they're pushing their awareness. So they will want to be portrayed in a very positive way in the public eye. Okay, they will not want to hide and shy away from the public eye. Okay. Besides, recruiters in general, their business is being connected to a lot of people and being visible. So it's always kind of strange when you have people that shy away from that. Yeah, that's what I'll say. I'll just leave it at that. Heart of Nixie says, as an extrovert, I've always thought one of the duties of leadership is to coax out the awesome ideas and thoughts of the introverts. Yeah, it can be. I mean, be aware that I think a lot of introverts regard you as the enemy, as an extrovert, someone who's not like them. So you've got to learn to understand them. A lot of times they have great ideas. It's not that, they just feel that extroverts are too, dare I say it, sometimes shallow, sometimes fleeting. They don't have the focus. They get bored easily when you're talking about things as opposed to people. So sometimes they develop that behavior because they've had to deal with a lot of extroverts and they've gotten burned on it. So that's part of it. But leadership is a very slippery topic. There's like it is an actual topic that has been studied a lot over the 8,000 years or whatever it's been that we've had a civilization. But if you go into on the internet and you look up like leadership, there's all kinds of total misinformation about what it is. Everybody thinks that it is what they think it is. It's like wrong. It isn't. Leadership is the ability to get everybody pulling in the same direction and get the behaviors out of others that you would have them behave. For example, if you're leading a team, you want everybody to want to work towards the goal. You want everyone to want to work together. You want everyone to, do the work on time, the way it's supposed to be done, as directed. That's basically what you want, right? A lot of people confuse that with other things, with altruism and, other things like that. That's not necessarily what it is. Remember, leadership includes a lot of different things, including anyone who's ever been in the military. You know what I'm talking about. It's like, it's not necessarily about being well liked and everybody having a good time. It's about accomplishing the goal, right? So, you know what I mean? It's a lot of different things. And you can certainly be an introvert and a leader. You could be an introvert that says very little and be a leader. Usually that works very well if you're leading other introverts. Anyway, that's a topic for a different live stream. Sherwayne says, I continue to ask questions about the structure of the division and reporting culture. Is it weird that none of the people I'm supposed to work with was in the second interview? That's not necessarily a red flag. Usually the hiring manager would be in, a second interview, or if there's multiple rounds of interviews, depending on how they do it, they come in towards the middle or end of the process. Okay, so, but it's not necessarily a red flag that those people weren't in the second interview. I mean, it doesn't inspire me with a lot of confidence, but, it's not necessarily a red flag. Sherwayne says, it felt completely out of touch from the first interview. Yeah, well, listen. If your choice is to have a second interview that was pretty much a repeat of the first, or to have it completely different, usually it makes more sense to have it to be completely different. Okay, different people, different nature of the questions, different dynamic, different vibe, everything. That's more of how it should be done. But just being different doesn't necessarily mean good or bad. Good different or bad different. Usually they go a lot deeper in the second interview. First interview is more like a screening interview. They're checking that, they're trying to verify if you're the type of person they can work with, and you're the type of person that's motivated to work here and do this kind of work. Like, will you be happy doing it? Or do you really want to do something else, instead? Like, that's kind of what the first interview is about. The second interview, generally, that's when they go a lot deeper. Okay, they go into like who you are. What are the things you've done? Why did you do them that way? How do you think? They want to try. It's an attempt to try and get to know you when there's no time to get to know you. That's what it is. The first interview with my direct manager and the HR associate went very well. The directors today just seem to not know anything. Well, listen. Okay, don't get me wrong. There's some idiot directors out there. Okay, fair enough. But having said that, directors in general are not going to know all the technical details about workers. Okay, that's not what their job is. Okay, they're a little more disconnected. If they're at least 2 levels up, they're going to be disconnected from like the tools you use, what you do all day, some of the techniques you use, whether you work with certain equipment, they may be disconnected with that. Sometimes you get directors that are like senior people that used to do that stuff, but they might have done it 20 years ago and things might have changed since then. So sometimes that can be bad because they think they know what's going on, but they don't. Things have changed since their day, right? I don't know whether it's worse to get someone like that or someone that just knows they don't know anything about what you do. But they're operating at a higher level, okay? So they will care more about things like attitude, okay, goals, culture, like how you communicate, what you consider appropriate and inappropriate versus what is inappropriate or appropriate in that organization. Things like that. They'll care about more of those higher level things, okay? Do you have potential to move upwards? Or are you someone that's going to be stuck at the bottom forever? Things like this. That's what they generally care about. They're going to not care as much about technical details of how you do your job. Sherwayne says, I just don't feel like I was able to communicate my value and skills to them. Now, this was the second interview. Well, listen, communicating value to somebody, it requires, I know this is going to sound so cheesy, but it requires 2 people, right? Like, you realize this incredible value that maybe you have, okay? But it falls on deaf ears because what you're saying does not strike them as something valuable. They think, no, that's not particularly valuable, right? There's a disconnect there. It's not that there's anything wrong with you. It's just that they're not really impressed by that. They're not looking to hear that. Now who's right? Sometimes it's you, Sometimes it's them. Okay. All you know is that there's a disconnect, right? Okay. It's not necessarily because there's anything wrong with you. Usually that's not the case. Most of the time that's how it goes. It's just that maybe your skills will not be appreciated in that place with those people. Okay. Maybe it's kind of a good thing that you're finding this out now rather than them saying, okay, we'll hire you. And then you start at that job, you do all these things that you know are like really, really good or really impressive. And they say, no, this is done all wrong. You need to change it to do it more like we want it done. And the way they want it done is idiotic. And then it never works out. Within 3 months, you're out of there and you're back in the same situation. Right? That's just how it goes sometimes. Thank you, Mel C. I'm glad that was somewhat helpful. Jermaine Hall, how can an employee overcome a demotion within a company? Does a demotion pretty much halt any future advancements within the company? It depends. It depends on the situation. There isn't a blanket answer to that. If you're dealing with the same people, a lot of times it does, because they're sort of signaling, this is what we think of you. We don't value what you have. Kind of like what I was just talking about a moment ago. Okay? To us, that doesn't seem important. Okay? Now, they can be right or they can be wrong. A lot of times they're wrong. Or maybe they're just not utilizing you correctly. I mean, that's very common. Right? But if you're at the same company and maybe you get a different boss and the new boss is different from the old boss, they think you're awesome. And maybe they promote you. That has been known too. Okay? And the reason you get that turnaround is because you're dealing with different people. Right? So it depends. It really does depend on the situation. I mean, another factor could be the role. Maybe you're in one role, you're not really what they were looking for, rightly or wrongly, but maybe they move you to a different role, and in this role, you shine, or they believe you shine. You give them what they think is really good. So then you get promoted. So, there's all kinds of factors to that. Heart of Dixie, is a restaurant or third-party place interview a warning sign that they are planning on hiring you as a replacement for an unexpected current employee? Warning sign on how they may treat you? I suppose it can be, but not necessarily. No. I mean, I don't know what industry you're in. I don't know what the culture is in that industry. But in my experience, no, it doesn't mean any of those things. It's kind of a standard thing to go meet in, not necessarily a restaurant, but a coffee house. It's more of a standard kind of thing. Just like you would, meet on any third-party location. It's not necessarily a red flag about bad things going on. Okay. Now, if there's more to the story that they've told you that, is relevant, then that might change things. But in itself, no. You're welcome, Chip. Hopefully it helped. Darkham says, hi, I passed first interview. Thank you for your awesome videos. You're welcome. Second interview will be more technical, but what you advise how to prepare to a second interview? I did a video on that, so you can watch my video just about the second interview. Bottom line, don't let your guard down. Sometimes they prey on that. They like to make it seem like, oh, we're all friends now. You're coming back. You already know me. You already know this person. So you can speak more freely, be a little bit more candid, casual. Don't fall for that. Treat it just as formally as the first interview. Sometimes that's a tactic to get you to open up about things you shouldn't be talking about that make a bad first impression. And yes, it still is a first impression. Michael says, love the channel. You are my go-to YouTube channel for interview process. Well, thank you, Michael. Thank you. Question. Looking to move from a senior role in logistics operations to management. Okay. How can one position themselves better in resume and in the interview process? Well, what do you mean by management? If you're already in a senior role, like, I would count that as, is it not a management position? Are you not managing people or projects or money or anything. And if you're moving to management, what does that mean? Is that no longer in operations or logistics? Basically, I mean, the higher you go, the less technical skills you need, the more people skills you need. And then when you get to a stage where you're managing money, you need some training in how to manage money. You need to understand the basics of accounting, the basics of finance. I'm not sure if that applies to any of these roles you're talking about, but that enters into it when you rise up. That will come at some point. Okay, usually when you get to a functional manager, you will be responsible for, you're either going to be a cost center or a profit center. If you're in logistics operations, you're going to be a cost center. So you will probably, you'll have a budget and you may have some discretion on how you allocate the budget depending on what you're in charge of. So you would need to know a little bit of that. You need to say, look, I've been responsible for, a budget of this much, things like that. Now, also as you rise up, you're managing people, right? So it's a real fallacy to think that just because you've managed sort of, stuff, that you can manage people. The two are completely different. A lot of people that have not been trained in how to manage people, but they've been put in charge of people, do a terrible job. They make the number one mistake they make is that they think that everyone is like them. Incorrect. There are many different types of people, and you will probably relate very well to people who are exactly like you. Most people have no problem doing that. They can communicate well with those people. They can motivate them. They can direct them. That's usually easy. Dealing with people who are just like you. Okay. Where the real challenge comes in is dealing with people who are not like you. So we talked about sort of one dimension so far, introverts and extroverts. That's one dimension. So if you're an introvert, you're managing extroverts, there's going to be a disconnect there. Okay. You expect everyone to think like you, to communicate like you, and they won't. And when you try and communicate the way you prefer and the way you think it should be done, it'll go over usually pretty poorly. So you have to adapt to communicating the way extroverts like. And that's just one of the dimensions. There's many different dimensions. So learning about how to manage people specifically is very important. Okay. That's one of the things. So you tack on money management skills, people management skills. Depending on what you've done before, you may have been managing operations, which means like daily, continuous, operations in and out, like logistics, like trucks come in, trucks go out, warehouse stuff gets picked off the shelves and packed and shipped. Forms get signed, customs gets dealt with, orders come in, the daily operations. So managing operations is one thing, but maybe you've never managed projects. Projects are like some kind of upgrade. It starts and then you work on it and then it ends and it's over, right? It's different from operations. So having project management skills can be important depending on what your role is going to be. Maybe you're going to walk into a situation and your job is to revamp how they do things. So it's not just going to be keep on keeping on, running the daily operations. It's going to be overhauling things, changing processes, installing new assets, whatever, equipment. So all of these skills are probably going to come into play at some point, depending on what your role is going to be. If you can give me more specifics, Michael, I could get a bit more specific. Jermaine Hall, very helpful. Thank you. My pleasure, Jermaine, and thank you for being here. Michael says, correct. Moving from a doer to a manager of others. Yeah. One common problem, a mistake I've seen people make is that they're so used to doing things that they have very little patience to train new people in how to do it. Instead, they want to take it on themselves because they feel like, look, I'm really good at this. Why don't I just do it? It'll be quicker. It'll be easier. It'll be, more error-free if I just do it. And so they don't really want to get the new person to do it. And remember, something I was saying this morning in my Side Hustle Ideas live stream, it's like you learn things by jumping in, okay? Like 90% of stuff in this world, you learn it by just jumping right into it. That will teach you the most in the least amount of time, rather than just staying outside of it and studying it. Jump in. You're in the driver's seat. Now go, right? That's going to teach you so much quicker. And in some cases better. So the problem with a doer becoming a manager of people is that you tend to try and take on all the work yourself. You don't want to train people to do it because that makes it go very slow and it takes up 2 people instead of 1. So the problem is that that's self-defeating. Okay, all the work will then bottleneck through you. You'll be overwhelmed. You've got all these people standing around waiting on you to do stuff. Your team is basically, idling while you try and do everything. They can't proceed without approvals from you, without you doing prerequisites. It's just a bad situation. You've got to learn to be able to train people. You are now sort of the gardener of this garden of plants that's your team. I know. There's my expression for today. There's my dumb expression for today. Dumb with a capital B. What was it? You are the gardener of plants that are your team. There we go. Wise words from the company's expert. Now, the first person to get that tattooed across their face wins the prize. And the place in Time Magazine for Business Person of the Year. Did I do this one? Darkham? Yeah, makes sense. So Knox, Noxx, Knox says, I left my last job in December to settle my father's estate. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Knox. I'm sorry for your loss. Should I be honest about that during an interview or give a more generic answer about why I left my last position? I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer on that. If it were me, I think that there is nothing wrong in mentioning it, okay, because it is a truthful answer to, like, if they say, why did you leave your last job, or what happened to you in the past that made you do this? If this is the honest answer to it, it's like, well, my father passed away and I had to go and settle his estate. I don't think there's anything wrong in mentioning that. I would try and do it in a way that doesn't create a ton of awkwardness. So say it in a professional way, okay? Because remember, the way interviews are done these days is, the person that gives them the best feeling about you gets hired a lot of times. It's stupid, but that's kind of how it goes. So what you don't want to do is make them feel really weird and awkward around you, right? So I would just say it like in a very professional, matter-of-fact way. This is what happened. I had to do this. And for that reason, I had to do this. But it's all taken care of now, and that's why I'm starting here. Something like that. Just, doesn't create a lot of awkwardness, but gives a truthful answer. And it also is a little bit proactive in that it stops them from pushing to further clarify it, right? It's like, okay, enough said. You have to take care of some stuff. Fair enough. Let's move on. Okay, Julia. How do you say that with a Spanish accent? Julia says, I just remember that song by Paul Simon, Me and Julio Down by the Schoolyard. For some reason, that comes to mind when I see your name. I don't know. Is that a good thing, or should I perhaps see a doctor about this? Is it right to fire 2 XIC people even though they're good performers? Okay, so these are like your second in command, third in command. Is it right to fire them even though they're good performers? Or should everyone tolerate them because they're valuable players for a company? Well, the obvious thing I got to ask is, why would you want to fire them? Is it right to fire them even though they're good performers? Listen, there's, like, if you're speaking in general, I mean, there's many reasons why that might happen. I mean, maybe they violated safety rules. Maybe they violated company policy that had like, a policy of zero tolerance. Maybe there was violence in the workplace, and it's like, I'm sorry, we've got a zero tolerance policy for violence in the workplace. You're out. Doesn't matter how good of an employee they are otherwise, or how good a performer they are. Now, this can be a real dilemma for managers, right? If there's something like that goes on, and I've seen all kinds. I've seen people stay strong and follow the rules, like they practice what they preach. If they make all these bold statements about, there will be zero tolerance on this, zero tolerance on that, and then their most valuable employee then goes and violates it. I've seen them say, no, sorry, you put me in a really tough spot because you're a great employee. Otherwise, however, you know the rules. I can't make exceptions. I'm very sorry, but, I've seen that. I've also seen some managers cave. And like, I know we said we had a zero tolerance policy, but like, this is my most valuable employee. And it's very hard to find people in this region that have those exact skills. I may not be able to replace them. And they go, oh, okay, we'll send you for some training courses and just kind of sweep it under the rug. And, you can't see my arm gestures. It doesn't work when I do it in front of my face, but, right? I've seen both. What you need to do is you need to practice what you preach. This is why you don't make rash statements about zero tolerance policies for like everything under the sun, right? Because whatever rules you make, you better be following them. So if you're just asking me in general, that's what I would say. Like maybe they harass other people. Maybe they make all kinds of, shall we say, no comments, right? Loud in a public place at the workplace, everybody can hear them. If you ever wanted to know what that person thinks of politics or religion or certain other people, now and you kind of wish you didn't. If they go ahead and they do this, and you've got policies on it, and you've communicated it to everyone, and it's a very serious thing. That's how it goes. This is why we train people, make sure they get the message. But yes, those are all situations that could lead to what I think you're describing here. Courtney 2 says, I will have second interview for a leadership role in a private equity. Hey, you were here a little while ago, a few days ago. Was it with this question? Role in private equity with HR leader and senior leader. What kind of high-level answers should I deliver to their question? Well, it depends what the question is. That's so general, I don't think I can really speak to it. Look. When it comes to managing people, when it comes to like leading a business, number one, there's many different approaches. Okay, so there is no one right answer that's universally accepted. Number two, there's different corporate cultures out there. So like, one company's approach to how they treat customers or how they treat employees or whatever, or their priorities, that will not be the right answer for another company. They have different priorities, different attitudes, right? And then on top of that, even if that's like within a certain organization that has certain values and certain approaches to things, you've got people that understand it more than others. And some people that misunderstand it, like someone in HR, they could well not understand what the right answer is. That's common. When you get recruiters interviewing executives for an executive job and asking an executive, like, how would you handle this type of situation? The executive gives an answer and the recruiter says, oh, I'm sorry, that's incorrect. It's like, how the hell would the recruiter know? The recruiter doesn't know, This is a common thing. That's one of the reasons why usually you don't get recruiters really deciding on what executive you hire. That goes to another executive, right? So what to say with all of those variables? That's a tough one. You really have to figure out. generally, these people are going to want some kind of echo chamber. They're going to want their values and their attitudes reflected in you. You know, if you say anything else, usually that will be a fail in their eyes. The only exception to that is if you are being recruited for the company by another executive, in which case your track record might speak for itself, and they'll say like, okay, that's a different approach than I take, but hey, you produced the results, so who am I to argue? You know, sometimes you get that situation. That's because it comes from respect. They know you, they know what you've done, they respect what you've done. But then you ask the question, well, if that's what's going on, why would they need to know what your attitude is? If whatever you say, they'll just say fine, right? Usually, when they ask these questions, there is a right and there is a wrong, and they've already decided what that is. So, you know, it's groupthink. These people, they want someone who will parrot their own values and opinions, or the values and opinions of their organization. It's as simple as that. So, that's usually what we're up against. You know, now private equity, I mean, once again, I've never worked in private equity. I've done my master's thesis on mergers and acquisitions, but it's like private equity is a little bit different thing. There's a lot more trends involved in private equity. You know, at least that's my understanding of it. It's more trendy, right? You know, so you get opinions based on the flavor of the month kind of stuff. You do get some of that, as I understand it. Darkham says, one more question, sir. What question should I ask at the second interviews? Thanks. Well, I've done 2 really good videos on giving you a list of questions you could ask in interviews. Okay. I did a video not too long ago, like a couple of weeks ago, called Questions to Ask in the Interview. I think I gave 12 examples in that video. So go and look at those. If you didn't ask them in the first round, you could ask them in the second round. There's certainly plenty to choose from. Courtney 2, I have 10 years experience in 5 different industries with strong achievements. Well, good. I've worked across 5 industries too. So we're, you know, you and me, we're like that. I have 10 years experience in 5 different industries with strong achievements, but I have not led an organization, which was noted in the first interview by the executive recruiter. The executive recruiter. Should I apply for leadership? What? Because you haven't been at the absolute top of an organization? Are you serious? Yeah, of course. Now, that can be a flaw. They say like, well, if you haven't led anything before, you know, we don't want you to lead this. We want someone who knows what they're doing. They have a track record leading the entire thing. That is common. I've been up against a few times. The way that also manifests itself is that you could have led an organization, but or an operation, but maybe the operation wasn't exactly in that industry. Maybe it was, you know, you led an industrial company, but it was, you know, dealing with this type of equipment. Maybe you applied for the role of, you know, they need someone to run the business that is also an industrial company, same size, same customer base, but it's slightly different equipment. You know, they go, oh, I'm sorry, that's too different. Your experience doesn't apply. You haven't done it before. So there's no limit to the amount of conservatism that could be stopping you. It depends how open they are. So this is another example of that. Now, if you've been in leadership positions, meaning that presumably you've been in a general manager role or higher, which means that you're in charge of profit and loss, you're in charge of the revenue side, you're in charge of the cost side, okay? If you've been in that position and it's in a similar industry and it's a similar situation, similar scale, okay, but that was a business unit within another organization, and they say, well, you haven't run the entire organization yet. I mean, there's not much you can do about that. These people have something in mind, and what they're looking for, it's not a question of whether you're qualified, it's whether you jive with what their vision is of what they need. Now, sometimes these people, a lot of times actually, they're completely out to lunch. They have no clue what they need. But for whatever reason, they've got it into their head that they need this. So the only question is, are you that or not? Right? You know, a lot of people think you've got to go in there and you've got to try and, you know, get the job. And if you don't get the job, it means that you're no good. You know, you have no value and you can't hack it. That's what a lot of people believe. That's false. You know, that's not what this is about. It's not a reflection on your value. All it is, it's a determination of whether you appeared like the thing that they had envisioned that they need, right? Sometimes they're looking for something idiotic. I've seen companies do that. And, you know, I'm sure everybody can tell a story of a situation where they were passed over for a job in favor of someone else. And you saw how it played out. They hired that person. It was a disaster and bad things happened. And they should have hired you. If they had hired you, chances are it wouldn't have happened that way. I can tell stories like that. I'm sure most people here can tell stories like that. Do your best. Go in there. Try to figure out what they're looking for. Try to show how you can fit within that. But depending on what they're looking for, it may be a complete stretch. You know? Just go in there and try and be likable. Try and be friendly. Try and have an answer for everything as much as possible. Try and make them smile. Try and give them the impression that it's not going to be a problem. You know, no matter what they throw at you, it's not going to be a problem. I've done something very similar. I did this, right? Similar idea. I've applied this approach in other situations, that approach and this approach. So whichever way it's going to go, it won't be a problem. You just go in there, you try and put their mind at ease. You try and get along with them. Great. If that's impossible, it's impossible. Don't sweat it. How do you say that? Sodiiesh. Sodiish. That just rolls off the tongue. It helps if you say it like that too. You got to grit your teeth. Sodiish. I have been applying for a few months with 0 calls. Most of my submissions have been on LinkedIn. Had my resume reviewed by experts to make sure it's attractive to employers. I'm a software developer. Okay. First of all, if you're on LinkedIn, most people use LinkedIn in a very ineffective way. They connect to recruiters and they try and contact recruiters. As far as I'm concerned, it's an absolute waste of time. Save your effort. You could get further by spending that time to watch TV. The way to use LinkedIn is to connect with hiring managers. So I'm not sure if that's what you've been doing, but do that. You know, you're going to be look. Let me see if I can bring something up here for a second. Okay, so here's my channel. Now I've done a playlist, okay, that talks about something here. It's a very old playlist, so you'll have to apologize. I don't look very flattering in this or whatever, but it's fine. Here we go. I don't know if anybody can see this. Maybe I'll make it. Can I make this bigger? Okay, so this is a playlist. It's called How to Tap the Hidden Job Market. Okay, as you can see, this is on my main YouTube channel page. Okay, so if you click on my name, it'll take you to this. And you got to scroll all the way down. And it says How to Tap the Hidden Job Market. And then this is a playlist that goes on. Okay, but this should give you some idea of what I'm talking about. If you haven't stepped into that world and done this, this is usually what breaks the deadlock when these, what I will call the standard channels, they're not producing anything. Standard channels being, I'm applying for jobs with a job application and a resume. I'm talking to recruiters and I'm not getting any bites. Or I am getting a bite, but the interviews never result in a job at the end of it. If that's a situation you're in, there are many other ways to get a job. This is one of them, okay? This is actually 2. I outlined 2 ways you could use this. But hopefully this should jog your mind on some of the other things you can do, okay? there's so much to it. It's an alternative thing. Now, alternatively, yes, I'm going to do some shameless promotion here. Okay. I have this course right here, Get Hired course, where I talk about that in great detail from beginning to end with templates, with examples, with step-by-step guide where I set up all the principles that apply to doing this and introduce you to them in a systematic, logical way. This is the course. Okay, there's a link in the description if you want to check that out. A lot of people have bought that course. It's quite popular. Both of them, actually, especially this one lately, the $100 MBA course. A lot of people have been getting that one recently. So, but the Get Hired course, that covers all of that. So if that's something you're interested in, check it out. Okay. But most people use LinkedIn the wrong way. LinkedIn is not a tool to contact recruiters with, although they like to think that. Everybody's got it into their mind that that's how you get a job. That's the default thing for most people, especially when they're young, because they were never introduced to any other way to get a job. That becomes the default way. If you look at the numbers, you look at what's actually going on out there. Don't take my word for this. Do your own independent research. Most people that have a job got their job not through that method, but through some form of networking. Okay? If this is shocking to you, as I always say, don't take my word for it. Go look it up yourself, go do some independent research, and you will see that that's true. Why is it not talked about more often? Well, my theory is that most people who are out there talking about how to get a job are recruiters. And it's a conflict of interest for a recruiter to say to you that to get a job, you don't need to go through a recruiter, right? So that's why a lot of people are not talking about it. But this is how most people get a job above a certain level, okay? If you're at the general manager level and you want to go at that level and up, you don't talk to recruiters. There are a very small amount of true executive recruiters that exist in that space, but usually it's all done through networking. Okay? And the great news about this, the reality, as I've found and demonstrated by building my own consulting business by using these techniques, is that you don't have to be at that level to use these techniques. It applies to everyone. As long as you know a little bit of protocol and talking to people or communicating with people, which can be easily learned. There's really not that much to it. I'm a technical introvert and I figured out how to do it. It's there. And a lot of people who do this get great jobs because they get hired by their boss, their future boss, who believes in them. And you report to that person. What better situation to be in? Okay, so just remember, there's more than one way of getting a job. Applying to posted jobs with a job application and dealing with a recruiter is one of the methods that you can use to get a job. Usually it's not the best method. However, it is the default method for young people, and there's a lot of disadvantages to it. I understand the tech industry is getting hit, but there are job postings. Yes, there are, and they're being applied to by hundreds of people. So statistically, your chances of getting one of those is less than 1%. Okay, if 500 people apply for a job, your statistical probability of getting that job is 0.2%, as opposed to the networking method where maybe one other person is talking to that hiring manager, if that, in which cases your competition is significantly less. Courtney 2, I am okay. Courtney 2, you got to clean up your language a little. It's hard to understand you. I am feel ready, but the recruiters play that game when I am apply for top positions. Okay, always old people is on top positions, and I'm just 33 years without standing track record. Frustrated. Any advices? Yeah, it's all very well to criticize old people because they're old, but you know what? Sometimes they've got a lot of experience. Sometimes they've had to work for decades to work themselves up to the point where they've earned their way into those positions because they've done everything and they have a full understanding. That might be the piece that you're missing. Now, if you're just 33, you have a disadvantage over old people in that you don't have as much experience. However, you do have an advantage, and the advantage is you have a lot more energy than these people. You're a lot more open-minded, okay? And you're not quite as set in your ways as you will probably be when you're 60, okay? So you do have some advantages. Now, instead of just complaining about the whole thing, okay, try your best to play this game and get into those positions, whatever you're trying to do. But if it's not working, if you're not really getting any headway, making any headway, okay, learn about if you're not doing the networking thing. First of all, learn that. That's kind of a no-brainer. Secondly, if you're 33, now's your chance to make your mark. Go out and do stuff. You don't need these people's permission for you to build up accomplishments. Go out and do something on the side. Go out and overachieve in some area. Go out and do some independent stuff outside of your job that publicizes you. It makes you a thought leader. It makes you a person of authority, okay? Or you could even do some entrepreneurial thing on the side that enhances your skills and demonstrates that you can do the thing that you want to do when people are not giving you a chance to do that through your conventional career. Okay, there's all kinds of things you can do, okay? So this is a multi-pronged approach to achieve your goal. Okay? But it's a fallacy to say oh, it's only old people that do it and no, I'm not old. It's wrong. Maybe, I don't know. I can't speak for your exact situation. Maybe it's all corrupt. I don't know. But I've heard that argument before. I've made that argument before when I was younger because I didn't understand what was going on. It's maybe you need 25 years experience in a certain area to really understand it well. Maybe that allows you to make proper decisions in that area. I don't know. That depends on what we're talking about here. But if that is what's going on, go figure it out. Okay? Go do informational interviews with a lot of people in your industry. Okay, this is something that you can do. It takes absolutely no money. You could do it while you have a full-time job. Go out and do this stuff. I've talked about how to do this extensively. Go and sit down with experts in your field, with people way high up. Pick their brain. Ask them what has led you here? How does this industry really work? How does this really work? What are the essential skills? Okay? Research those people. Go on LinkedIn. Do people searches for people in certain positions in your industry. Okay? You can see their profile. You could see their resume, essentially. What do they have? Do they have qualifications that you don't have? Right? Do they have experience in certain things that you don't have? If they all have that experience and you don't have it, maybe that's something you should get that would perhaps qualify you for being in those roles. I don't know. But do this kind of research and go out and do stuff. Okay? If you're ambitious enough to want to get to the top, because that's what it sounds like, then you need to step up and start doing some of these things because it's not just going to be handed to you because you want it. Okay? Nor is it going to be a time-serving thing. When I get old, then they'll give it to me. No. You have to have done a lot of things during that time to qualify, to earn in, so that when you make a decision at that level, it's wise enough to be the right one, considering all the factors that are at play. Okay? So that's what I'll say. So best of luck, Courtney. You can accomplish some incredible things. If you're 33 and you've got a lot of ambition, the world is your oyster, okay? But you have to start making it happen. Don't just sit back and expect these people to just give you these positions of power because you want them. You have to go and earn into them. And for a few people, for whatever reason, they may never give you these things. In that case, you have to go out and you have to create those positions for yourself. And that's what I talk about when I say go out and, don't need an employer to convert your value into cash. If you can do it yourself, go out and do it yourself. Okay? Start something. Lead it to success. You don't need these people, especially if there's some kind of bias going on. You don't need them. Okay? So sorry to be a little forceful there, but it's true. Okay? There's a lot of people that sort of just sit back, they do nothing, and they expect to be handed something because they were expecting it. It's not necessarily, okay? Not necessarily. Even the act of getting a job, this whole thing, the whole thing I talk about on this YouTube channel, which is how to get a job, it does require, on a small scale, people to go out and make things happen, right? If your ambition is to be like right up here, okay? You have to do that times 10, okay? You have to go out and make big things happen. Not just apply for a job successfully and get the job, but you have to go out and realize accomplishments. You have to create your own job. You have to go out and make a name for yourself outside of what they allow you to do or give yourself or what they give you permission to do. Oh, I can't speak today, sorry. But anyway, that's my rant for today. I keep wanting to use my fancy little button here. Existential crisis. Okay. So, stuff to think about. Okay. You are so capable, Courtney, you need to just give yourself permission to go out and make things happen. I know that sounds like I'm reducing everything down to a platitude, but really, that's what's going to lead to stuff one way or another. It's not about waiting your turn, asking permission, requesting something and being granted it. It's about you generating it yourself, especially when you're ambitious to go right up here. Put it this way, for some of those roles, you need people that, like I've seen some of those roles, executive plus type jobs, where in order to get those really and know what you're doing, you have to have been an independent millionaire. You know what I mean? You have to be able to go out and I'm so good, I could create this business operation that goes out and generates me multi-million dollars. And even then, that's one of the requirements to really be in a position where I'm leading this massive organization and I know what's right. That's not typical, but I'm saying that's some of the things that we find at that level. So it goes beyond just sort of treating it like a job that you apply for and you get based on, I've got this degree and I've been here for 10 years, stuff like that. So anyway, coming back to reality here, Ant Johnson says, what sort of answer should one get back from a recruiter when you ask them how is their relationship with the hiring manager? Okay, so what sort of answer should one get back from a recruiter when you ask them? Why would you ask that? So you ask the recruiter what's the nature of their relationship with the hiring manager? What you're going to get back is you're going to get back the sort of party line, the sort of, PR answer, which is, oh, it's a great relationship. Even if it's terrible, you're going to get that answer back because they're not going to say, oh, I have a terrible relationship with the hiring manager. They're not going to say that. They have a responsibility to represent their organization in a favorable light. So they're not going to tell you, oh yeah, I hate working here. I got a terrible relationship with the hiring manager. That's just how these things go. So the other thing is, whatever. I would not have asked that question. I don't think it's even relevant. And it depends. There are many different business arrangements set up between hiring managers and recruiters. Now, maybe it's a big company and the recruiter and the hiring manager are both internal. They're both employees of the organization. Then it's you got to work with them, right? You can't just say, nope, I refuse to work with that person. They're an idiot. They're a jerk. I'm not going to deal with them. You may not have the option. If you want to hire an employee and have them to your team, you got to go through your HR department. They assign the recruiter that is free to work on this. You have no choice in the matter. Okay, so you got to make it work. Secondly, if you're going to an outside recruiting firm, maybe you're a smaller company, okay, the recruiter would be an employee of a contractor, essentially. And there's different arrangements you can have. If they're a bigger company that's doing this, they may be on retainer. So you would have probably a good relationship with that recruiter. If they're a smaller company, depending on the business relationship, you can get relationships or arrangements where you are only dealing with that recruiter exclusively. So they get paid for their work regardless of which candidate you hire. Okay, that's one way of doing it. Another way is it's sort of like a consignment relationship where you sort of, as the hiring manager, you put out this job to all these different like HR companies, these recruitment companies, and they all compete to bring a good candidate to you. And if you hire their candidate, they get paid. The other ones don't. Okay. So there's all kinds of arrangements that you could have between the hiring manager and a recruiter, depending on the situation. And I think in all of those cases, they probably won't be honest with you and explain what it really is. So it shouldn't really matter anyway. All you need to know is that they want to come up with a candidate that the hiring manager thinks is great. And they're investigating you to see if you're that candidate. I have to sign off in about 5 minutes, so I'm just going to finish up some of these questions here. Ant continues, says, with the potential client, or in my case, the potential employer, the recruiter is a third-party company and the hiring manager is with the employer. Yeah, that's typical. But as I say, even with that arrangement, you can still do it several different ways, right? So, but usually that's not something that they would disclose to the candidate. The reason why they don't disclose is because you could still play all kinds of shenanigans, right? If you as a candidate contact the hiring manager directly, it has been known that the hiring manager will then start talking to you directly, cut the recruiter out of it, announce to the recruiter that, I'm sorry, your services are no longer required. And then they hire you directly and they didn't have to pay the recruiter. So they used the recruiter and they didn't actually pay for them. There's all kinds of stuff that goes on, so it's just a very touchy area. I don't think they would ever be honest, or in a lot of situations, I don't think they would be honest. Justin says, I have an interview tomorrow and I'm stressing like crazy. What can I do to calm myself down? In one day, what can you do to calm yourself down? Well, what I normally would say would be to practice, to rehearse, get a friend or family member to do a pretend interview with you, do several pretend interviews. I don't know if that's going to do too much in one day. Usually if you do this after a couple of weeks, you start feeling much more confident about your ability to interview, this kind of thing. All I can say is that, just be aware of the reality, which is you're going to go in there, you're going to do your best, okay? Everyone, especially when we're young and we're starting off, everybody gets nervous to varying degrees about job interviews. Everyone always thinks that this interview that this job they're interviewing for is the one chance they're going to get. It's not. There will be others after it, okay? It's not the one chance you have. It's just one of many, okay? Interviewing is an acquired skill. Like you learn it by doing it. So the more you do, the better you get. But you have to start somewhere and you have to start doing these. And it's not going to be fun in the beginning, but over time, they'll get easier and easier as you've been to more and more of them, okay? The other thing is that it has no reflection on your value as a person. The only thing, like I was saying earlier, the only thing the job interview does is it's them to see if you are the type of person that they envision they need, okay? A lot of companies, they have no clue what they need, okay? Especially when you're dealing with recruiters. They ask you some basic questions. Have you done this before? How many years of experience do you have? Stuff like this. They try to verify some things through verbal answers. But they honestly have no idea what skills or traits you need to outperform in a certain job. So they're taking their best guess. They're usually flying nearly blind. And, it's about being likable. Just go in there, have a sort of smile. Don't go in there looking like really uncomfortable and upset. Go in there, just, have a kind of smile, look pleasant. Just do your best. That's all you can do. And the biggest factor is going to be random chance. Okay? That's the biggest factor that decides these things. And a lot of times, even if you are perfectly qualified, there's other people that are perfectly qualified too. It comes down to a roll of the dice on who they offer it to first. Okay? So don't sweat it. Go in there, do your best. You're going to be fine. And when you're done, keep looking forward. Don't keep waiting for the phone to ring. Then immediately focus on the next opportunity. Keep applying to places and using multiple methods to try and get a job and generate more opportunities, okay? The more opportunities you have, the better you feel about the whole thing, okay? If you only have one job interview, you tend to feel rather nervous about that one. If you have like one or two every week, then you tend to feel more comfortable about it because you see a trend. If this one doesn't work out, I got another one next week. You feel better about the whole thing. It's a lot less stressful. Okay, you're going to be fine, Justin. Don't worry about it. Okay? You're not abnormal. You're perfectly normal. And the world is your oyster. Last question. Steel Goom. Steel Goom. I thought you said Steel Groom, but nope. I don't know what a goom is, but I'm excited to learn. What's a great strategy in deciding between two great offers with similar packages? That's a problem that most people look forward to. I don't know if there's really a strategy. Number one thing would be, I don't know, figure out where you want to end up. That is certainly a factor. Like, okay, they might pay you both the same amount of money and, benefits or, whatever, but where do you want to end up? Do you want to go down this path or that path? Another factor is how well you get along with the hiring manager. That's going to be important. Sometimes you know that, you have a good vision, and sometimes you really don't. But that can be an issue for a lot of people. That can be a make or break for any kind of job, is if your boss believes in you and trusts you and has a good relationship with you. That can trump a lot of other issues with a job, is if you've got a boss that believes in you and you get along really well with. So that might be another factor too. Beyond that, I can't tell you what's the right thing for you to do. We all have to decide that in our own way. So best of luck to you. And that's a great way to end for today. Thank you. There's 27 people here right now. You guys are all awesome. I will be back. I have some time tomorrow, actually. So I'm going to do some more live streams tomorrow, including another episode of How to Get Hired, general Q&A. So if I didn't get to you today, come back tomorrow and I'll be happy to help you if I can with any question you might have regard to careers and employment and business and that kind of stuff. Thanks so much. You guys are awesome. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you soon.